Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Shekalim. We are up to Perek Zayin, Mishnah Zayin. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilun Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Aranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam Began Eden, Amen. This Mishnah lists the three remaining decrees instituted by the court. Ala Melach, V'ala Etzim. The Mishnah begins, the court decreed concerning the salt that was used to salt the offerings that were burnt on the altar. We know the Torah requires that all offerings or parts of offerings that are burnt on the altar be salted before being placed on the fire, as well as the wood that was used to fuel the fire that burned the offerings on the altar. Shiyu kohanim neotin bahen, that the kohanim serving in the temple should be able to make use of them for their needs in the temple, to salt sacrificial meat before eating it, and to make a fire to cook the meat. Now the sacrificial meat eaten by the kohanim has less sanctity than the parts that are burnt on the altar, which are given to Hashem. Therefore it should be forbidden to use anything consecrated for use on the altar, such as salt and wood, for the sake of eating sacrificial meat. Nevertheless, the court instituted that these items may be used to prepare sacrificial meat for eating. The court is able to do this by stipulating that the initial consecration of these items allows for such usage. Now the kohanim may use these items only for preparing sacrificial meat for them to eat, but not to prepare any non-sacrificial food. They eat even food that they will eat together with sacrificial meat in the courtyard. Again, they can only use these items for preparing the actual sacrificial meat for them to eat. Now, although this salt and wood, again, are consecrated for the use of the altar, and it should therefore be forbidden to make any personal use of them, nevertheless, the court decreed that it should be permitted. The next decree deals with the ashes of the para aduma, the red cow, which were used for purifying people or objects that became tameh with corpse tumah. The Torah commands that a completely red cow be slaughtered outside the temple and then be completely burned until it is reduced to ash. The ash is then gathered and added in small amounts to spring water, which is sprinkled on people or vessels that have become tameh from a human corpse to purify them. V'ala para, and the court also decreed concerning the para aduma, shelo yu mu'alin ba'efrah, that one should not transgress the prohibition of mi'ilah, deriving personal benefit from consecrated items, if he makes personal use of the ashes of the para aduma. Now, the ashes of the para aduma are not subject to the law of mi'ilah, even under biblical law. The Mishnah nevertheless calls it a decree of the court, because the biblical law frees a person from the penalty of mi'ilah only from using the ashes, but it is still forbidden to benefit from them. However, when people saw that there was no penalty for using the ashes, they became lax about this prohibition and they used the ashes to treat wounds. The court therefore instituted that someone using the ashes must pay the value of the ashes as a rabbinic mi'ilah penalty. As a result of this institution, people became reluctant to use the ashes even for purifying people from corpse tumah, to fear that they might be penalized for somehow deriving personal benefit from them. So the court restored the ashes to their original status and freed them from any penalty of mi'ilah. So our Mishnah refers to this later decree, as the Rav explains. The final decree deals with the pairs of doves brought as offerings by people purifying themselves from certain kinds of tumah. And they decreed that when disqualified bird pairs are found among the birds bought by the temple with the money deposited in the chest for bird pairs. Now, when someone was obligated to bring a pair of birds as an offering, he would bring money to the temple and leave it in the chest marked pairs of birds, as we learned in chapter 6, Mishnah 5. He would then go on his way, relying on the kohanim to use the money to purchase a pair of birds and offer them for him. If the birds bought with this money were then found to be invalid, a new pair would have to be brought for the owner to receive his atonement. So the Mishnah says, again, they decreed that when the disqualified bird pairs are found among the birds bought by the temple with the money deposited in the chest for bird pairs, a new pair of birds should be bought brought to replace them using communal money. After the new pair is purchased, the Kohanim must transfer its ownership to the unknown person on whose behalf it is being offered, so that it can be considered his or her offering. Rabbi Yossi says, replacements for disqualified bird pairs are not brought from communal funds. Rather, Misapeket Akinin, the one who supplies bird pairs to the temple, Misapeket Psulot, must also supply replacements for the lost or disqualified ones as part of his contract. We discussed this earlier on, this contract in chapter 4, Mishnah 9. And the Rav does tell us, V'alacha ki Rabbi Yossi, the halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, De'achi Amrina B'Yerushalmi, this is what we say in the Yerushalmi, Tanai Betinu, it is a stipulation of the court, Amsapeket Akinin, Misapeket Avdot V'Tapsulot, the one who supplies the bird pairs to the temple must also supply the replacements for the lost or disqualified ones as part of his contract. And that is in Rabotai of Mishnah Zayin, in Perek Zayin. We continue now with Perek Chet Mishnah Aleph. The previous chapter discussed how to decide the status of money, meat, or animals found in the temple in Yerushalayim or in their surroundings. The first three Mishnayot in this chapter discuss how to decide the status of items found in Yerushalayim in regard to their Tumah and Tahara. The Torah states that the saliva of people who carry certain types of Tumah is Tameh. This applies to a Zav, Zava, or a woman who gave birth, as the Torah speaks about in chapter 15, Pasukit of Sefer Vayikra, and the Rambam discusses in Nechot Mishkav Umoshav, chapter 1, Halacha 15. The rabbis decreed that any saliva whose origin is not known is to be treated as Tameh in Mesechet Torot, chapter 4, Halacha 5. Our Mishnah teaches that Yerushalayim is an exception to the rule. Kol harukin nimtzein b'Yerushalayim teorin. Any saliva found in Yerushalayim is assumed to be tahor. So if someone came into contact with it, he remains tahor. The rabbis did not decree tumah and saliva in Yerushalayim so as not to cause unnecessary tumah to any sacrificial meat that might come in contact with someone or something that had touched the saliva, which would then have to be burned. Therefore, in Yerushalayim, they left the matter to be decided according to biblical law, which states that doubts are decided according to the majority. Since most saliva is not tameh, we can assume that this saliva too is not tameh. Chutz mishel shuka elyon. This was the rule anywhere in Yerushalayim except for saliva found in the upper marketplace, which is where tameh people congregate to avoid being around tahor people so as not to make them tameh. Since there are many tameh people in that marketplace, the rabbis included that place in their decree of presuming saliva found there to be tameh. Divrei Rabbi Meir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi says, saliva found in Yerushalayim is also subject to the decree that any unknown saliva is tameh. However, Yerushalayim is more lenient guidelines. B'shari Yemot Hashana, during the rest of the year, outside of the three pilgrimage festivals, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, Sheba'emtza Tme'in, saliva found in the middle of the road, which is where most people walk, is assumed to be tameh, since there are many tameh people also walking the streets of Yerushalayim. V'shebatzidadin teorin, while the saliva found on the side of the road is assumed to be tahor, since tahor people walk off to the sides of the road to avoid being contaminated by the tameh people. Ubishat haregel, however, during the pilgrimage festivals of Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, when the overwhelming majority of people are careful to be tahor, now a person is required to purify himself before festivals. The Gemara says in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 16b, so that he will be prepared to enter the temple to bring the special festival offerings and eat sacrificial meat, as the Rambam writes in Echot Tumat Ochalin, chapter 16, Halacha 10. So during Shat HaRegel, during these pilgrimage festivals, when the overwhelming majority of people are careful to be tahor, Sheba'emtza teorin, saliva found in the middle of the road is tahor, V'shebetzadin tmein, while saliva found on the sides of the road is assumed to be tameh, Shemipnei shen mu'atin, since tameh people are very few during the pilgrimage festivals, Mistalekin etzadin, they are the ones who remove themselves to the sides of the road so as to avoid contaminating the tahor people. Now Rabbi Yossi does not differentiate between the upper marketplace and other areas in Yerushalayim. Rather, all depends on whether it was found in the middle of the road or on the side, as well as on the time of the year. And any saliva found there is therefore on the sides of the road, since again, those are the ones that are moved to the sides of the road so as to avoid contaminating the tahor people. Any saliva found them is therefore assumed to be tameh. In all other places outside Yerushalayim, however, saliva found on the side or in the middle of the road is presumed to be tameh. Again, the Rambam discusses this in Erchot Avot HaTumot, chapter 13, Halacha 8. The Rav does tell us, V'lachek Rabbi Yossi, the Archa follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. That is in Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.